Hello, everyone. We're finally back with our Primordial PRs. Sorry it took so long. We just had busy weeks.
Sorry, gamers. I had a job and other stuff.
Yeah, I had classwork to do. And a bunch of emails to send. Woo, I love sending emails.
But here we are.
Yep.
So, yeah, this is not too fresh in my mind because I did write these because we thought we were going to record them a lot earlier. So I did write these a while ago, but
yeah, same with me.
I don't think my thoughts have changed. Obviously, some of the teams, there's been some FAs, and if I remember them, I will talk about them when they happen. But if I don't, then we'll just be treating it as if
also
it was
with
after the draft.
Also with these FAs, they aren't being applied until week 2.
Yeah.
So our thoughts are still valid for week 1 at least. And yeah, I guess we should get going. Funny little slide. Moving on. Alright, so our last ranked team is Griff. For the positives, I do think that their offense is quite good. Like, I like the G-Dar Megalop Dio attack is really hard to switch into. Then you have like Cleavor to provide free rocks, which is kind of useful as well. But the defensive utility, like, I know it's a hyper offense team, but you don't even have you don't have a flying resist. Your ground resist is a cutie fly. Like, yeah, sure, Ferrothorn and Slowking can kind of take hits. Runerigus too, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of the main thing. Is like there are other hyper offense teams that had obviously they still have defensive holes, but not quite like this.
Mm-hmm. And it's also like with your hyper offense, it's pretty much just like click buttons with DOA and G-Darman. Like, they are not going to take hits.
Yeah.
Like, you can kind of EV them to, like, you can play around with Dio attack EVs to, live some hits, but it's still really awkward to do, and you can't, it doesn't, it only lets you live maybe like one weaker hit instead of like a strong hit, usually.
Yeah, if that, like, kind of depends what it is. Like, it's not taking any attack that's super effective, in my opinion. Like, I haven't looked too much at the calcs on it, but like, yeah, that was my main number one thing, is like the offense is just frail and like pretty easy to revenge. Like, Deoxys comes in and then you I think we talked about it in the last PRs, like you get into that mind game of like, oh, are they gonna sucker, are they gonna pursuit, are they gonna, like, stuff like that. And then it's like, well, there goes your biggest threat.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a lot to fall back on.
I'm also not really a fan of not having like any real setup sweepers to support your hyper offense. Like, yeah, G-Darm, DOA, Megalop, like, they can all break, but then your setup options are what, like Cleavor, SD Still Valley. SD Still Valley is fine, but you bring that like maybe once or twice a season, and it's also one of your main ways to like switch into things and get your offense
it is your resist to like half the types, realistically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I think I'm thinking of, like, when I see this team, when you're talking about that, I think about Kron's team, where we're saying like offense is difficult to deal with when it gets going. This one, what you said, is difficult to deal with when it gets in, and it's like this one doesn't get going. Like, it gets a kill and then you get revenged, and I think that's the main issue. It's not like on this team where you can snowball. There's not really an opportunity for that.
Yeah.
So that's the main weakness for me. I don't really have too much else. It's a bit physically biased. Like, your Deoxys can be special, but then you don't really have any other special attackers in the team.
Mm-hmm. Like a bulky setup sweeper, would have really helped with this team out. But your bulky setup sweeper is what, like Slowking, Silvally,
Yeah, Slowking can't do that. Slowking is the only like pivot on this team. Like, good bulk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, I don't have too much else to say.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to say either. So let's move on. All right. Next up, we have Cherryumi. We both kind of agreed that this team isn't our favorite. I like the top 4, but then afterwards, it just kind of starts to fall apart for me. Like, I don't really know why you would get the SERP when you already have the Water Pond. Like, it feels very unnecessary. And then the Arctivish also is just kind of a do-nothing mod. You don't have like Snow to help support or anything, so I'm not really a fan.
I think that got dropped, did it?
Yeah, the Arctivish did get dropped, so
okay,
that's a moot point for the future at least.
But yeah, I agree. Some of this, we were kind of talking about this one because I think I originally had this one up at like 10th or 11th, and then Hazy was like, "What are you talking about? Like, this team's not good." And then every time I look at it again, I'm like, I just don't vibe with this team. Like there's the bottom half of it doesn't really make sense to me. It's like it's really fast, but like there's no defensive pivots. Like I said, it should be fine given the bulk of the top four, but like I think it's gonna still feel that pain. Like you don't really like. You can switch in Dawn Wings and Mawile into attacks. Do you really want to? Like, you want to keep them healthy so that they can get a turn to set up and do something a lot of the time. So I think that it could struggle with not having that pivot. The other part I was talking, like mentioned here, is that like none of the rockers here want to run rocks. Like the rocks Terrakion, that's not coming very often. Dawn Wings doesn't always fit it, and Mawile doesn't always fit it either. So it's the kind of thing where like you're basically relying on your spikers for your hazard setting, which is fine. It's just
additionally too, your removal is just defog Serp, which is not real.
Yeah.
Serp.
No, like once again, like when are you clicking that?
Yeah, like Serp. Like even if you're bringing like support Serp, you much rather do like taunt, glare, screens, knockoff. Like defog is like the leech seed. Defog is like the 6th support move you want to ever want to consider on it.
Yeah.
And that is your only removal. It's really bad.
Yeah.
I also note here that, like, I think your flying and fire resists are pretty terrible. Like, Terrakion is your fire resist, you know, not great. It doesn't like taking Will-O-Wisps, like, to begin with, so, like, just like a Victini clicking V-Crate, like, how do you switch into that? Likewise, if you're flying resist, Mawile is a better flying resist. Ursulina does have, like, a natural bulk to help, and it being a Will Absorber is kind of nice for Terrakion, but it's still, you know, gonna get worn down just because of how it plays.
Yeah. I think that I did say the trigger option was good here, but like you could say that, but then also like there are 6 things over 100 speed in that like 100 to 110 speed range. Like I just don't like you're setting Trick Room and then you might be setting yourself up for failure if you can't take advantage of it. So like I say that, but it's also like you basically have to just run away with the game with Mawile or Dawn Wings, otherwise there's not much use in running Trick Room either.
I mean, I will say at least like Dawn Wings is a self-sufficient Trick Room abuser, so you can do that as a breaker, and I think that works.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of fast
for screens is fine too. Yeah, like Meowstic screens is like not a bad option here. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of problems with this team that I have, and like I said, I find more every time I look at it, which is not a good thing because that kind of would tend to happen over the course of the season, is that people will start finding things, and then if someone watches the replays and you don't change this team up, they're going to just keep exploiting them or finding new ways to exploit it.
And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this team, so do you want to move on?
Yep.
Alright, next up we have Brosif. Unlike the last 2 teams, I think there's a significant amount of pieces that I do like. I think the top 3 is really nice and looks fun to use. I think that getting Core of that late as a slow pivot is really nice. Thundy T is also a pretty decent mon. But the game plan just feels a little bit simple, and I think Tusk is kind of forced into a support role here. It's your only rocker, and it's your only real. Well, it's not. Yeah, it's your only rocker, which is not great because I think it wants to go offensive more often than not to help Giratina out.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I don't know. I'm not a Tusk guy. I've used it, but I didn't have a great time with it. And I think my problem with it sometimes is that it gets, it gets pressured. Like it has these weaknesses. It doesn't have great special bulk. So it's like to run into this support set. If someone just randomly catches you with a coverage move, then it has no recovery. Like then it's just over. So, like, I don't necessarily, like, it can still do that job, but it's probably not what the original thought was for the mod when he drafted it.
I will say, at least, like, I think you have really good knock absorbers for Giratina. Like, Mega Audinode plus Tusk is probably, like, the best knock absorbing duo I can think of. And
yeah, for sure.
And, I mean, that also helps Boulder, too. Yeah, I like pieces on here. I just don't think it all comes quite together. I kind of see the vision of the Scolipede, but it feels like he could have gotten spikes for something from something a bit cheaper.
Yeah, I think this team's very usable still. I think it just doesn't quite do it for me. That's kind of where I'm at with this. It's pretty usable, and I think you'll do fine. It just has some weaknesses, and like, yeah, the game plan's a bit simple. Like, it might be pretty like if your opponent has a definitive answer for all of these things, just how they're in the way their draft is built, then they're gonna have a pretty easy time playing around your team unless you make some real creative builds.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so I don't really have much else to add. Do you want to move on?
Yeah, good to move on.
Alright, next up is MCCC. I swear the rankings do get different. I'm sure you've noticed by now that we have the same rankings for the bottom 4.
Yeah, I had them, they used to be very different for me, and then I kind of came back to them and looked at some of the teams again and changed my mind, and coincidentally changed my mind to exactly match what AC said.
With this team, I actually do like it despite the low ranking. I just think it feels a little too honestly. Like, I think that the bulk core, Jirachi, Tanglu, Sylveon, Tentacruel, it's a great mix of pivot of being a support core that isn't totally passive. Like, Tanglu usually breaks subs, Jirachi, flinch hacks, Sylveon specs can hurt pretty hard, Tentacruel can pivot out. So I think the bulk core is good. I just wish that there was a little bit more offense, because it's really just bundle, gouging fire, and Mega Heracross.
Yeah, I kind of had the same thing. My main comment, double wish support for Tinglu is really good. I think this team just kind of, there's a bit of a firepower issue. It's kind of like I said, not enough offense. It's kind of relying on those top 2 and Mega Heracross. I think it's weird to say because it's not typical, but Mega Heracross is one of the most important things on this team, and I think it is going to have to come probably more than it should because it's a Mega Heracross. But that's fine. It's just going to have to come more often. It is. I thought Heracross got spikes. I feel
it does.
Yeah, the doc I have doesn't show that, but it does. So it's the hazards they're fine, but they're good. You're always going to be able to get your hazards. You're always going to get your hazards from Ting. It's going to come every game anyway. So from that side, it's not as big of a deal. But you kind of run into trouble with the offense if they have good answers. It's Terra Iron Bundle, to be fair. But if they have a good answer to your bundle and your gouging fire, you're in real trouble. And the ground switch-ins I kind of pointed out for gouging fire are also not very good. It is kind of that Mega Heracross, Leafani, and Drifblim. Those are very situational. So
I would say that your ground resist at this point is just the Tinglu.
Yeah.
And kind of going off of that, I said that I think Edgequake could be an issue, because, Tinglu's a good switch into that, but it will get worn down, and if you can't consistently be getting wishes out for it, then that could be an issue.
Yeah, I think that's if you're not getting wishes off, if someone's putting enough offensive pressure on that bulkier side of the team, if you have something like a Terra Bandit, something that can just actually 2-hit KO everything on that list, then when are they ever going to be able to click wish and pass it into Ting, right? If Tinglu's the only thing that actually lives the attack. Something we're going to bring it back to Victini, I guess. I don't know, that's my thought. I mean, I think I have the Victini, so I'm thinking about it. It's none of these things are going to live more than 2 hits from a Victini, so it's kind of hard for them to be passing wishes around.
Yeah, despite all these critiques, I do think that this team is still very playable, and I think it's a well-built team. I just think that it feels a little too honest, a little underpowered.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have too much else to say.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to say either, so I think we can move on. Alright, next up we have Kevin. Oh my god, I swear these rankings do change at some point.
This is a jump scare when you look at this team, man. This team, he's just playing a different game from the rest of us. I really had a hard time saying where I put this, in the rankings of the teams. It has everything that you would want for what he's trying to do. So as you would expect, Boots and Taunt, kind of a problem. In Draft League, you can just kind of throw Boots on everything. Honestly, in the newer gens, that's one of the problems with Stall. And that's kind of why I wouldn't, like, even though he's probably accomplished exactly what he wants, I think the one thing that I would have liked, I think originally he was looking at, like, Gothorita. That could have been interesting. But he has Trapinch as a trapper, so, like, he has pretty much everything that you would want in this team.
I would say the only
I just don't rate the playstyle.
I think the only other thing he could have wanted for what he wants to do is something like a Weavile or just some sort of fast revenge killer, just so you can deal with it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think as it is, it's fine. Like, I do think even for stall, he does have some offensive win cons, mainly Annihilate and Renaclus. And with just the amount of even Demon Registeel could be a solid win con. I think for what he's trying to do, it's not as passive as it could be, and I think it's built well. It's just, like he said, he's playing a different game. It's kind of hard to judge him compared to everyone else.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say other than that. I think, yeah, you point out Weavile or something with priority, or pressure style, PP style Weavile's real. There's no pressure. I will say that's the only thing I just realized that you said that. I was like, there's nothing with pressure on this team, which could be something that would be an extra irritation for, something like a Victini that clicks, I'm going to keep saying it, clicks like V-Create or Blue Flare that has limited PP. If there was an opportunity to take advantage of that, beyond just taking 8 of them with the bulk, you could take a little less. But, yeah, I think he'll do fine. That's what I said, as much as I don't like this, he'll probably do fine.
Yeah, I agree. And, yeah, I think now we can move on.
Yeah.
Alright, okay, finally now our rankings are different.
Oh, we disagreed on this one. Okay,
yeah.
good.
Oh, disagreed by 1.
Like I said, not by very much, but we did disagree. You like this team more than I do, marginally, so go ahead.
So, I think, when I first looked at this team, I was like, okay, I like the Genesect, but it feels a little underwhelming, but the more I kind of think about it, the more I kind of like it. I think, have the Mega Main plus the Sand is good for revenge killing. Sure, you have, your ground resists, sorry, English bad. Your ground resists aren't the greatest on paper, but then you have Gliscor, Sinistcha, so you're able to take those fine enough. You don't have a rock resist, Gliscor, Toxapex might as well be rock resist, Sinistcha too. Just in general, I do think that you have a lot of ways to play around things. I just wish that you had another 100 plus Speedmon, something like an Azelf or a Whimsicott or something in the 110 to 115 speed range, just so you don't allow things like Cinderace or Roaring Moon to go adamant against you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that kind of I think I talked about it in the last PRs. That can kind of invalidate as fat as Toxapex is, and Gliscor as well. It's they can't switch into adamant stuff as often. Yeah, you also mentioned it, the ground resist is a Sinistcha and a Gliscor, and the Sinistcha is gonna switch out, it's gonna Terra out of that probably. So you get into trouble in that respect. I think the bulk is good, Toxapex and Gliscor have good synergy together. T-Tower's always just there. Sand, I don't know if you're bringing Stoutland every game as a revenge killer, which is kind of why I said the offense is a bit easy to revenge. Unless you have Sand up, you can just kind of, if you have a Scarf that's faster than Genesect and Gyurem here, they have to be at +2, otherwise you're not really scared of them running away with the game, and that's kind of why it's lower down for me. Because I think a lot of this team works and it'll probably do fine and win games. It's just, that's a weakness that is going to be a pain for it. I think the Steel Killer for Genesect and Gyurem is also, it could use a better one. Manectric can kind of do that. It does have fire coverage, and Genesect can hit steel types because it has every coverage. But yeah, I could see that being an issue as well.
I was looking more as a bulky fire could cause issues, but then that's where I think T-Tar is really important for this team to be the fire killer offense. Because something going back to Victini again, I think that could cause issues. I could see Megazord X cause some issues, stuff like that. Cinderace as well. So, I think the team is definitely playable as is. One other critique I do have is that your removal is just Gliscor. and you have a Kyurem who doesn't really, who is like out of every ice type likes to run boots probably the least. I feel like more often than not with Kyurem you want like Specs, Scarf, Leftovers, Dice.
Yeah.
So I could see
fair.
that. I could see your removal being just Gliscor, who usually doesn't have the move slot to fit in Defog nowadays. Like, I could see that being an issue.
Yeah, and Genesect is you turning around, taking rocks every time.
Mega Bane is also vaulting around.
And it can't run boots, yeah. I think, well, Genesect isn't running boots either. Like, so, yeah, I think the main one that, like, obviously, I've never really seen Embor do something. I think that Embor could be something faster. That's the main thing I see on this team that I'm like, I think you could probably upgrade that to something with more speed as a revenge killer, but and somehow something with removal. I'm not sure what the exact bond would be, but other than that, I don't have too much else to say.
Yeah, I think we kind of hit everything. So yeah, now we can move on. All right, next up we have Sage Spike, and this is where our rankings also differ. I guess
yeah.
you like it more, so you can talk about it.
I didn't remember putting this in this high, but it makes sense. I just think that these top 5 are crazy. Like everything, this team has like surprisingly good synergy. It just has the main problem is there's a lot of pressure on Yuxi because the defense doesn't really have recovery, other than like Knuckle Stack. And then the speed is just not there. Like the fastest mon is Chiyu. Like that's a huge problem. You can run Adam and Modest on anything faster than that, and that's a huge deterrent. And kind of like it definitely invalidates like something like Yuxi is on that borderline where it's like if you have that extra attack boosting nature, you're kind of screwed, and it can't really function as a switch-in because it gets 2 KO instead of 3.
Yeah, for me, I would have had this team way higher up if it just had a faster mon. Like, even if your fastest mon was like a Noivern or a Cinderace or something like that, this team would be so much higher up because I love everything else about it. Like, your top 5 is ridiculous. I think that your low tiers are also very solid support mons in their own right. Delmayas can be a real issue. Even if it's like a hard, like, you even have like, you know, good Trick Room setters with Magear and a Yuxi. It's just that you don't always want to rely on that. And like you were saying as well, I think the Yuxi is kind of forced to do a lot of the support here, especially if you want to enable offensive Lando.
Yeah, I think I've been there. Like, I have drafted teams where I have a Yuxi, and it's literally like it just did in BPL, where it has to come every game because it's the core of the team, and they work fine. It just does have a lot of pressure on it, and that's why I put it high, because I think I could see myself using something like this with that extra fast thing. I think, to me, the one that I would probably pick is, I think Electros is the easiest guy to change to something quicker. Because you already do have, it's kind of, like, Electros has that nice, there's Levitate, but it also has that neutral bulk that's really nice to have. But you already do have, like, Lando and Yuxi as ground immunities, and Delmise can take those attacks. And I think that would probably be my pick of, like, if you're going to change something to something with a bit more speed, it would probably be the Electros. Maybe there's certain that I don't want to talk bad on that guy. So.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think that like Dragalge, Electros, and Earthstring are like and I think the bottom 4 is like the easiest to replace, but you can just like replace like 1 or 2 of those for some combination of something a bit faster, and then I think you're golden. But even then, like, I think this team is still absolutely capable of winning games, even with being as slow as it is, just because of the top 4 being that good.
Yeah, and like, I mean, Chiyu can run Scarf, Lando can run Scarf, Urshifu can run Scarf. Like, it's not like it can't revenge stuff, it's just, it can struggle with something that's like at +1 that's faster than that.
Mm-hmm.
But
like
at the same time, it does this
could be an issue.
Yeah, Scarf Latios or something like that, but it also does deter a team from running something like that because of the Trick Room option. So I think it functions pretty well, and that's why I have it up a bit higher.
That's fair.
But it definitely could be improved.
Yeah, literally the only reason I don't have a higher is I just think that you want a little bit more speed. So, yeah, I don't really have much else to say about it.
Yeah.
Alright. Moving on, we have Lucy. We also differ a little bit with her team, so I guess I can start explaining why I like this team so much. I think it's a little, like, when you first look at the team, it feels a little odd to look at, but then the more you think about it, the more it kind of works out. Like, you have the great pivoting with the Lottie, the Prim, the Ogerpon, the Glow King, so you can move around stuff pretty easily. You have great Scarfers. You have great, like, revenge killing with the Arrow. Scarf Croak with, like, Pursuit is really nice. And I also think that the hazard setting is really good. Like, even if you're, where was I going with? Like, there's a lot of different mods that can run hazards at different times, and you never really feel like running rocks on it is, like, a bad thing. Except I guess maybe for Mega Arrow, but even then, like, support Mega Arrow sets are surprisingly effective in my experience. One other thing I think that would be nice is if you could get a good fighting type to really help deal with bulky darks. That could be awesome. Like, Prim is a good dark killer, but just something like a, I don't know, like a Hariyama or a Mienshao or like some sort of like mid to lower tier fighting type just to alleviate pressure off of Prim for that could be nice.
Yeah, I like this team. The more I look at it, the offense is underrated. Like you were saying, like you look at it for a little bit and you're like, oh yeah, this works. Like this makes sense. It has pretty much everything you could ask in that respect. I think defensively it could struggle a bit in longer games. Like if they can chip away at your Primarina, and like Crook has a hard time living a long time. So like I think it could be exploited. I actually weirdly, I'm looking at the Magneton now. I'm like, it actually does make sense. It's a good way to trap and kill steel types that like this team doesn't love. So I think it's still a good value pick. I mean, we lowered the price of Magneton, so I think it's good to see that someone finally took it. I think the main thing that I have with this is like it's a little less flexible than some of the teams that are ranked higher than it. Like Latios, obviously Terra Latios is like probably one of the best things we have legal. But like Slowking, like you know what it's gonna do. Primarina has some flexibility. Mega Arrow, I've never seen a support set. Maybe it's something that can happen, but like same with like Ogerpon and Crook. Like you have a pretty good and Skarm. Like you have pretty much everything on the team. You have a good idea of what it's gonna do. So there's not that like, you know, like something that has a physical or special set. Like something like there's not too many of that on this team, which could be that extra versatility that helps in prep. But I think it's still very usable. And it takes a lot of work to beat this team.
Yeah, I think my only other critique, which is more of a nitpick than anything, is that the Skarm is, when I say like it feels like a bit of a necessary evil, it just feels like your base switch into like, oh, I don't know what else I really want to switch into something. I'll just go Skarm, and like it's fine. It's fine at that. It's just I think it could get worn down a little quickly, and then it's out of everything on this team besides like the bottom three that are like coming like twice a season at most, it feels like it's the one that's going to lose you the most momentum. So I think you just need to be careful to not let it stay in for too many turns and let your opponent get going with like their setup sweeper on it.
Yeah, that's really fair. I mean, it has Whirlwind. Might need to come quite a bit. But yeah, you don't want that Skarm to sit there. I also like that's kind of that I'm a momentum guy. I like the momentum of like Latios, Slowking, Primarina, Ogerpon. I think that Mega Arrow could burn some of that. Skarm will burn a lot of that. And I find that Crook sometimes gets you into weird situations where it revenge kills something, and then if your team doesn't have the bulk left, you just got to pick a sack. So I could see that being an issue, but otherwise I do really like this team, and I'm looking forward to seeing them in action.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it in action too. And I think we can move on to Hoodbun. We both evaluate this team quite similarly. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
You go ahead.
Okay, so I really like the top 6, and I think that I think the Diancie also is quite nice. It's really just like the Furfrou Duosion. Like, I think you could have done better with your like Shittermons, which is kind of whatever. Like, the Shittermons come maybe like they shouldn't come realistically. My biggest concern is that your hazard setting is kind of bad, honestly. Like, you don't really want to do like hazard stack chomp too often. It's good at that, but you don't want to do it too often. Although with my experience, it's probably the better stick, because every time I run SD skill shot, it misses at the most important times. So then otherwise you have Diancie, which can do it, but then, you know, it also likes to do, like, you also want to enable the occasional, like, offensive set with, like, ID press or, like, Calm Mind, stored power sweepers. And you're also relying a little bit much on your natural book to switch into stuff, because that's like Mega Scizor, Torrentee. They don't have a shitload of resistances, but they're neutral against a lot of stuff, and they will get worn down from that. Especially Mega Scizor.
It has a lot of resistances, but it definitely doesn't take like neutral hits. It can still get worn down by, definitely. Yeah, my main defensive problem with this team is just Edge Quake. Kind of like we were getting at, like if you have Edge Quake, what does the switch into? The ground switch-ins are Thorn and Rotom. Like, I think that like a strong Edge Quake that can kind of muscle through something like the Scizor and the Garchomp, like, really becomes a problem for this team. Same thing, like great pivoting priorities, like having Pow and Scizor, and Quack, I think, has Jet as well.
It does.
That's great for revenging stuff if you don't want to, like, it has solid speed, but that's also good to have. Yeah, I'm not even looking at the Furfrou and the Duosion, like, those aren't even real. And it's kind of good that they're not real, because then you're not tempted to bring them, and I think everything, like, the battle of the 1 point shitter is, don't bring it more than it needs to come, and the one time you bring it should work.
Yeah.
And at least in this case, they might never come, which means that they're never losing the game for you. I think Big Bulky Waters is also not ideal for this team. Quackable can kind of Terra Electric or something like that to get through them, but the top two don't love something like a Alomola. Could be a headache for this team to deal with, especially with Rotom. If you're pivoting into Rotom all the time, it's going to be taking damage and not able to recover that back. But yeah, I think maybe change the Furfrou and the Doge or something, but like I said, it doesn't really bother me that they're there, because, like, at least you're not tempted to bring them. If you switch into something that your opponent actually would prep for, that might be better.
Yeah. I don't really have much else to say about this team. Like, the top 6 really just speaks for itself. Like, those should come... Like, if you're not bringing all of those at least, like, 7 times during the season, then something must have gone terribly wrong.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't really have much else to say. I think we can move on.
Yeah.
Alright, next up we have Iron Doom, and we really rate this team quite differently. Do you want to start?
My opinion of this team is sliding down, I will say. I think since I wrote this, if I read this today, I might think a little bit less of it, but I'll let you go ahead.
Alright, so I think that offensively, like, you have good support for Naga. You took Heatran, which is probably the best Naga Nadell check in the format. I think Mega Glade is quite solid. Like, Mega Glade, H-Sam work nicely for it, because usually Naga's checks end up being like a bulky steals, so you have Glade deal with that, or bulky psychics, and Samurott should be able to deal with those. I think that your priority is also very good, mainly like the Samurott Rillaboom, even like Glade with Shadow Sneak is pretty nice. However, I think you're a little bit reliant on it for revenge killing, because Sandy Shocks, like, it's a fine Scarfer, but it can get a little awkward when you play it like that. And Naga doesn't mind running a Scarf, but you don't want to pigeonhole into being your Scarf revenge killer. Generally, you want to prefer having like running the Nasty Plot sets that it's so scary for. Also, your removal is just Togekiss, which is a mon that I already don't really rate past Gen 6, and that is your only removal is not great, especially with like how much you like to hazard stack with like the Sandy Shock, Samurott, Heatran. And I also think that like Fairy plus ground coverage can cause issues here. Your Fairy Resist is just the Heatran, so once you Terra that, then you don't really have a Fairy Resist. And then, you know, obviously Heatran is famously 4 times weak to ground, beating every HP ground in existence. So something like a DD Mega Alt, I could see that cause issues if it gets up to +2, then I don't really know how you beat it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I rated this pretty high. I think So there's some FAs that I won't talk too much about, but I really don't like them. They dropped Sandy Shock, Stealthstorm, and Morgrim, and I don't rate that at all. I think I rated all of those on this team. My problem with this team is like, yeah, the Togekiss has way too much pressure on it. Like, it's just not. It's been 3 generations since that thing was a good mon. So your Heatran definitely gets forced to take defensive Terra types to kind of make up for that, like, ground weakness, and that is fine. Like, it is still usable, and I think the priority this team has is really helpful because the Revenging isn't the best, but like, I do think that Sandy Shock's option was still really important to this team to have. It also is kind of the best hazard setter on this team as well. Like, Miltank and Heatran don't have a problem running rocks. It's just, and they probably will run it anyway, but it's just nice to have that extra option with shocks. I think because of the priority, you don't have to run Scarf Meganadel, unless their fast mon is something that like resists Grassy Glide or something like that. But yeah, I think the main thing that's missing is that good fast Scarfer, which they didn't fix with their FAs, which is why if I rated this team now, it would be a lot lower.
Yeah, I don't really like dropping the Sandy Shocks. I think it was a nice piece as like your secondary, like special breaker. Helps soften things up, and like it's just a good offensive pivot, which I think works well with like the Rillaboom Samurott to keep you keep pivoting around. So without that, I don't like the replacement of Rotom Frost is like fine, but I think you also.
It's not a steel killer though. Like,
yeah,
I just don't like it. Like, because shocks can also kill steel types for Naganadel. Like, I don't know. And Rillaboom doesn't like steel types either. It doesn't like flying types. It's a really good pair for Rillaboom, is my opinion. And I don't know why it got dropped, because it was like kind of, to me, one of the main pieces of this team that makes it work. Mm-hmm. And the main piece of this team that is really the decider is this Togekiss, whether it's going to do well or not.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how this goes, but yeah, I think a 3 is maybe a little overblown for me, but I did like this team a lot. I think it can do a lot of good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think we can move on.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have AJ.
We agreed again.
Yeah. This team, like, it feels well supported around Dracovish. I like the pieces on it. I think the Mega Houndoom is weirdly, like, really fits really well here, oddly enough. I kind of rate it. And you have, like, good switch-ins to pretty much everything you would want. Like, Finny, Goldango, Hippo should be able to take, like, every hit that you want to take. However, I do think, like, I don't know, just something doesn't click for me in the same way that, like, I look at this and I'm like, oh yeah, this is, like, a top 3 team.
Yeah, I agree. There's a reason it's 6th. Like, it's just missing something. In this case, it's not a... I think for me, things that are in the, like, 8 to 10, it's like you're missing one thing. In this, it's like you're missing something, but I can't quite figure out what it is. Big bulk is solid. The offense is really good. It really appreciates the webs from Vikavolt, but doesn't need them to work, because you have the sand option with the Dracovish. You get webs up, and you can't get rid of them because there's a Goldango there. I definitely think this team would be a really fun one to use. I think another slow pivot might be nice, because Pheromosa or Dracovish, you have to be able to pivot to bring them in. And like Hippowdon doesn't really do that. Same with Tapu Fini doesn't really either. So it's kind of limited in that respect, but I think that it could still be played around and do really well. Mm-hmm. If you position yourself really well, this offense complements each other really well. And then yeah, only one rocker. Like, Hippo can always run rocks. It's probably coming every game with this team anyway. But like, that's basically your only hazards other than webs, which is a little frustrating to see when you have a Goldango that can keep them from getting rid of them.
Mm-hmm. I think that having a low tier spiker would have been nice, just so you can abuse Goldango hazard denial a little bit more. I also think that the offense is a little bit on the frailer side. Like, Pheromosa Cortana just kind of die to a light breeze. Dracovish has some decent bulk, but since you're being invested in offense pretty much all the time, like, it's gonna get worn down, and you don't really want it taking that many hits. The Goldango is like hit or miss. It does have it can get in a lot of the times, but it's gonna get worn down from like taking like 20%, 15% over and over again, and it doesn't really want to run boots either. So it's just something to keep an eye out for. And then obviously the Houndoom, you're weak to all hazards, and your bulk is not great. But I think I do like the Houndoom though.
I think it'll work. I think this team will be really fun to use, and it's just a question of whether it does have the opportunity to. There's not a huge amount of setup sweepers, but like Kartana can snowball.
Pheromosa snowballs.
Something like Pheromosa could snowball. Like I could see that the team can just get in a good position and run away with the game. Like once webs are up, very hard to deal with this team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a
On to the
overall.
next one.
Yeah. It's been fun. All right. Next up we have Rage, and we also differ a little bit on this team. I think that the top, honestly, like everything except for the Spite Ops, I think is quite good here. Like Blood Moon, Metacham, Enamorous, like how do you switch into that? And then once you do like finally deal with it, then the Gren just comes in to clean up. And like you also have like Tinkaton, P2, Wash are really good like low to mid-tier support to help get your offense in. And they take a lot of hits as well. You have great hazard setting. I think like the one complaint I have is that like your fighting resists are kind of cope. Your best fighting resist is what? Like I don't know.
It's terrible. Yeah. Like like that's the
Like maybe you can get an Ammon off of fighting resists. Roselia is like fine if you get the poison point proc, but
I don't know. You're not
it has
really
45 defense.
Yeah. For me, like the breaking power is really good. Blood Moon it does the same thing. Metacham usually does the same thing, and Amorous usually does the same thing. So that's one my comment about the flexibility. But you have Terra with Blood Moon, so you can vary up the sets a bit more than you would with the typical Blood Moon set. To me, it's just the main thing with this team is that it has 7 mons. Like, I just don't rate the bottom 3 here. I rate them; they're usable. I just don't think on this team that it makes sense to have them. Like, they have all your hazards are those bottom 3 other than Tinkaton. And I guess Grin can run spikes too. But like, to me, that's the issue is that like you're not really gonna bring those very often, given the strength of your top 6, 7.
I mean, I could see situations where the Roselia wants to come a decent bit because like you have knock. You get like Tinkaton with Pickpocket. You have and Enamorous are like okay knock switch-ins, so you can kind of deal with that. Helps with bulky waters, so I can see Roselia come to a decent amount of games. Claydol's kind of hard to fit, and then Spite Ops
Claydol's too passive, and Spite Ops isn't real. So like, I think it's a little bit by saying like, I think the hazards are fine, and I think this team is really solid. I think Blood Moon could be forced to defensive Terra. I think I'm nitpicking a lot here. Like this team, looking at this, I like this like comparably to that Iron Doom team. Especially after the trade, this team, I definitely prefer it. I think the pivots are solid. Like you got P2 teleport, you got Rotom bolting around. It's a little bit matchup fishy, but I think because you have the offense just compensates each other so well that it's fine. The defensive Terra on Blood Moon, like, isn't that what it's for? So it's not really that big of a deal. Like, that's kind of why you have that Terra, is so that you can get an extra turn to set up or get an extra turn to recover and beat one of your checks. So I think that's probably not going to be too much of an issue, but like, I don't know if you're really going to be able to run like Terra normal on this team because of the fighting resist and because you might want it to resist something else.
Yeah, I think my other real complaints are I think the removal could be better. Like, Wash is a good defogger, but it doesn't really want to run defog too often. And then otherwise you have Claydol, which I don't think comes to many games. And you're a bit reliant on P2 just being like, I don't know what else to switch into, just go P2 and take the hit. Which is like, whatever. It's like, P2's pretty good at that. But, like something like I don't know, like a specs like just trying to think of an example. Sorry. Fuck. Like a superior Leaf Storm, like the Serp's already at like +2 and the Roselia's on the bench. Like you have to go P2 and pray pretty much.
Yeah, that's kind of that. There could be situations where if a team starts snowballing because they they pick off your Enamorus, or like if it like something like a Kartana or something like that, if it picks off something and starts snowballing, like you could be in a bit of trouble. But yeah.
Yeah, overall, it's still a really good team.
No, it's a really, really good team. Like I think it ended up 5th, and I could definitely see it being rated higher too.
All right, so do you want to move on?
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have Banana, and we both really like this team. Do you want to start?
Yeah, the top 4. Like, I just looked at this earlier today because it's my week 2 match, and I was actually, the top 4 is really fun to use. Like, Coco Moth with a Palafin is just like, and then there's also Terrapagos. Like, there's a lot of just like, this team can have a lot of fun because a lot of these mons can run as a breaker, or they can run as a late game cleaner within that top 4, and like Coco is a good support. The rest of the team, there's also a whole Deoxys just sitting there that you don't even look at for a second, and you're like, wait, there's a Deoxys with those top 4. I think I pointed out, luckily you have a Palafin, because I think if you had to play against a Palafin, it could be a bit of a problem for those main, like for the Coco Moth Deoxys, like that's something that you would struggle with. But like, I really like this team. I think one more slow pivot would be nice to kind of get that Deoxys in, because otherwise it's a bit tougher to bring it in. But like, you can also have an offensive pivot like Coco or Palafin and get it in off of someone switching into that. This team can really control games with the momentum it has, and that's, I don't know, this is one of my favorite teams because of that reason. Like, it can just kind of control games by bolting around, and then all of a sudden it just opens up, and one of these top 4 can just clean away the rest of the team.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think the top 4 plus the Deoxys, and I even like the Mega Bomb Snow on this, weirdly enough. Like, just a bulky Veil Setter that has some extra priority with, like, strong Ice Shard is pretty nice for this team. My biggest concern with it is just that you're mostly relying on taking neutral hits, because your natural bulk is not the greatest on this team. Like, your only rock resist is the Flygon, so like, more realistically, your rock resist like a Fortress or the Terrapagos, which is like doable, but it's not ideal. And you can't really deal with long games just because of like how frail your team is. Yeah, I just, in general, like, the top 4 kind of speaks for itself. Deoxys is ridiculous. Like, I think the Overquill, Mega Bomb Snow are nice support mons with Veil and bringing spikes and all that. I don't rate Fortress, but I know Banana loves it, so I'll leave it be.
You gotta have your comfort, guys. Yeah. I think that the longer games could be a bit of an issue. Like, you look at Fortress and Bomb Snow, both have a 4x fire weakness. Like, there's stuff like that definitely can be exploited on this team, but like, we talk about the long games, this team's not gonna have a long game because it has so much offense. Like, it'd be very hard to force this team to have a long game before it just breaks through your team. So I think that's just why it's so high, because that is a concern that it has, but I think it's rarely ever gonna actually come up against that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have much else to say. It's just a really good team, and I like it.
It just speaks for itself.
Alright, next up we have Black, and we also disagree on this rating a little bit. I guess I can start. The more I look at this,
number 1 pick.
Yeah, the more I look at this team, I'm like, how do you win against this team? Like, I really had to dig into the nitpicks to figure out, like, how you could deal with it. Like, it's so fat, none of your bulk is really passive either, besides, I don't know, like, I guess the Muck, but, like, that shouldn't come too often. Your Terror users are great. You have great Revengers. You have good speed control. Terror's Root is busted. I already mentioned the Terror users, but like, I have to reiterate, like, that thing is stupid good. So like, I don't really know how to critique this. Like, I guess I can say, like, I think the Samurott is dog shit. I think you could have done better 1-pointers. And because of that, like, Mammoth Swine coverage could be a little bit of an issue. Like, your Ice Resist is just Sama, but then, you know, you get you don't want to let that thing get EQ, but then you can just do like Terra Bug Zarude or like Terra Dark or whatever, and you have a good enough switch in. So I don't know. I really struggle to come up with complaints. Like, even the hazard setters, like, yeah, sure, you only have 2 rockers, but like, Mega Steelix runs rocks every game, and then DOS can run like all sorts of support sets, so that's kind of whatever.
Yeah. I think I had this team lower because I think I yawned the first time I saw it. I think it's just it's just a little too bulky for my liking, and I think historically I've not really valued that type of build in CDLA because you have so much offense. I that's my main concern, but Florgus and Megasteelix complement each other really well. Like Florgus just keeps it from dying. We've seen it before with Florgus and Mega Aggron. Like Daptos Latios, like you said, not passive. Zamazenta can take plenty of hits. This team is really, really solid, and I think my problems with it are like a little bit that it's a bit setup reliant. Like you're gonna want to be slapping specs on the stuff, but you're probably not. That's just not how this team plays. This team just plays by being bulkier and impossible to kill. So you don't even really need to set up on, like, you can set up on things. You don't even really need to have the immediate breaking power because no team is going to have the immediate breaking power to break apart your team. So, like, you can kind of just sit there until you're positioned well to have one of your setup sweepers take it away. So, yeah, I think it's a really solid team. I agree. Samurai, like, I don't know, Regigigas, they're kind of, are those really going to come to games? I hope they do because I want to see this team. I want to see someone break this team down, but I think this team's really, really difficult to play against, and I haven't looked at the schedule, but I really hope I don't play against it.
Yeah, like, my only other complaint besides, like, oh, Mammoth on coverage could, like, cause some issues is I just think it looks really boring to use. Like, I would hate using this team, like, I would feel compelled to run like Specs Latios and like Estes to root every week just because like I don't want to fall asleep.
Yeah, that's me. Like I just can't play a game this long. I would be putting specs and bans on all sorts of things in this team, and that's just not how it's designed. And I think I just have a hard time looking past that because we've seen. I'm trying to think what season was it. There was a team that was like this fat that once I think it was Sebasaur, the one that had the Neganadel, and like a Celestial and a Tangrowth, and like anyway, it was like a very, very fat team like this that still had that setup cleaner option, and it pretty much won everything. So I guess it does work occasionally, but I'd have a hard time seeing past that play style because not a lot of people in the league do it.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this team, so I think we can move on.
Yeah.
Alright, so our number 2 overall ranked team is Flap. Do you want to start?
Yeah. How do you switch into that? Like, I just don't. Like, there's a Spectre, there's an Urshifu, and a Terra Metal. And how do you switch into that? You have really good pivots with, like, Swampert and Moltres. They complement each other really well. They maybe don't have the most bulk, but they're really, like, I really value, like, a good mid-tier pivot. And I think they do really well. Just get rocks up or throw Will-O-Wisps around and then pivot out. And then Fez can also do that as well. So it's like that top 6, and then you also have a Mega Latias, which I have always found in the past that if your Mega Lati team doesn't have enough bulk, you struggle because it doesn't really want to be taking hits. It wants to be taking one hit while it clicks Calm Mind on you or clicks Dragon Dance on you. This team has enough bulk, nice pivots to bring it in without having it chip too much. So I think it has a really good time cleaning up endgames after like Urshifu and Melmetal break teams down. And then you also have a Spectre that you can use early game, late game, however you want. The Hazard's not the best. Urshifu kind of being your fastest Scarper, also not the best. And I think I was trying to nitpick there, but like a Dark or a Ghost type could cause this team some problems because Urshifu isn't a great resist in that respect.
Yeah, I just want to like reiterate how good like I think the top 6 really are. Like, what switches into Spectre? Like Dark types, normal types. Urshifu beats the shit out of those. What switches into Urshifu? Bulky fairies. Melmetal just demolishes bulky fairies. So like the top 3 already have like insane offensive synergy, and then I think like the Swampert, Moltres, Fizz, and Dippy have great defensive synergy too for your pivot core. And none of them are really passive either. Like, I mean, Swampert can be a little passive, but like usually it's still strong enough to break subs. And then you still have like the whole, like, even the X-Blad like in the back, you have that as like your secret weapon, like I want to just like click Terra Normal Boom Burst, and you pick another sack, and oh no, now your Shifu check is gone. Oops, guess now it's time for me to win.
Yeah.
I think I have very similar complaints to you, that like I think your viable Scarfers being or Shifu and Spectre, like they can run Scarf just fine, but they don't always want to run Scarf. Like I think they prefer other sets. Then besides those two, what are you scarfing here? Like Bramble Ghast, I guess?
Yeah, you're not. Yeah,
and your hazard setting is also just not great. Swampert's a good rocker. Bramble Ghast is an okay spiker, but like, that's it. Bronzor isn't real.
It can be, yeah, exactly. It can be pressured into not getting hazards up, for sure. Like, if you put the right pressure on that Swampert, like, if you're turning off that Swampert into something that has a grass coverage move, then it's never getting rocks up. It has to switch out into your Moltres or whatever. But then Flap just switches into, like, a Melmetal on the grass move and just deletes you. But, like, I think this team works really well, but yeah, that is the main issue I think I could see is, like, some of the revenging is not ideal. Like, or Shifu, if it's not Scarf, gets into, like, sucker mind games trying to kill your things that are faster than it. So, I could see that being a little bit of an issue, because this team doesn't have, because the bulk is, like, quote, mid-tier bulk, your Melmetal is, like, maybe a kind of a stopgap if something's trying to snowball and take away your team. And if you don't get it in before they get up to +2 or something, then it could be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think this is, I mean, it's my number 2.
Yeah, it's my number 4.
Easily been my number 1. It's a really good team.
Yeah. Alright, moving on, we have your team by process of elimination. This is not, like in our Desolate ranking, we had my team as the number 2, Fish's team is number 1. We aren't trying to, like, boost our egos, it's just kind of how it fell.
I put my team at number 4, and then I slowly bumped it up, so obviously I'm biased, I won't talk too much about it. My main weakness is that I have a Ghost weakness, but I don't play Flap in regular season, which is great. I think Meow might have to run Scarf a little bit more than I'd like as well. Just given the rest of the team composition, like, I think that a Scarf Victini is really great, but with Terra, it can benefit a lot more from getting super effective coverage on stuff as well, so I don't always want to be running it like that. Like Scarf Pult, it's fine. Like, I don't think I would do that. I'm historically a Dragapult hater, but it just clicked right into this team really well, so I'm excited to use it.
Yeah, for me, like, I think that the offense just synergizes really well together. They cover their type weaknesses, their checks pretty well. I think the Empoleon, Slitherwing, Gligar, like, pretty good mid to low tier pivots. Empoleon, Slitherwing, well, Empoleon, Gligar can be a little passive, but they at least have, like, some extra utility, like Taunt, Haze, Roar, so, like, they're not total setup fodder. Slitherwing usually is strong enough to break subs, and, like, Banded First Impressions can help revenge stuff here. I think you have great defoggers, Empoleon, Gligar, don't mind running defog, Rotom, because it's like a cheap utility option here, it's not like one of your main pieces, you can find ways to fit defog on it, and of course, like, the hazard setting is just, like, you can just shit out so many hazards, pick how you want to set up rocks, pick how you want to set up spikes, like, you can do anything you want with it. Like you said, I think Ghost Spam is an issue, because Bibarel isn't real, and Meowscarada is your actual Ghost Resist, which is not great. But you can just do stuff like Terra Dark Victini to work around it, I guess. And I think that it is a little physically biased, but it's not really that bad. Like, Pole Victini can kind of go either way, Diancie can go either way, so you can pretty much play around however you want. It's really hard to find issues with this team besides the Ghost Resist being bad.
I think the other one that could cause problems is just, we said a lot of other teams, they rely on taking neutral hits. I rely a lot on taking resisted hits. And that could be a problem for me. Like, the Empoleon, Slitherwing, Gligar, they do all have exploit, like Gligar and Slitherwing both have a 4x weakness that's exploitable. Empoleon does have quite a few weaknesses, so it's the kind of thing where it's like, I do to some level rely on pivoting those around and positioning them to take resisted hits, and like a strong neutral hit can be an issue. and it would probably force me to be a more defensive Victini, which is not really what it's there to do. I think I'm excited for this team. I haven't used a lot of it before, so there's definitely going to be a bit of a learning curve, but like I think it complements each other really well.
Yeah, I think it's a really good team, and that's why it's our aggregate number 1. So just a quick recap on our overall rankings. This is how it broke down. Fish is number 1, Flap and Black we have tied for 2nd overall, Banana, then Rage, AJ and Irajim end up tied, Hoodbun, Lucy, Sage Spike, Arrow, Kevin, MCCC, Brosif, Cherryumi, and Griff rounded out. So
yeah, I think all the teams are. I think there was an overall difference in strength between this division and Desolate. I think that there was a lot of stronger teams in this division when I went to do the rankings.
I agree.
So I think, and that comes as a part of like Desolate had a couple gimmick teams, which can kind of mess up the whole vibe of all of the drafts because they're picking things that don't make sense. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really exciting division.
Yeah, I think the top 13 teams I think are all very capable, and I think like if you gave me any of those 13, I think I would have fun using it. Even like Brosif's team, I think I would have fun using it. It's really just the last 2 teams. They feel like you were drafting from like leftovers, which Griff kind of was because they dropped a lot of their team in Grace.
That is fair.
But,
yeah, I think that generally, like, as it usually is at CDLA, like every team has a good amount of strength, and there's no game that you come into where you're guaranteed to win, which makes for an exciting season.
Yeah, looking forward to it, and yeah, that's about it. I don't really have much else to say. Thank you all for watching, and hope you have a great day.